Hello. Just so you know, this episode was recorded before the UK government's guideline changes were announced on Sunday, the 10th of May. So it's recorded before the lockdown easing began. That's just something to keep in mind while listening. I'll let you continue. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the show with me, Dan, and my guest, Jade. You are the first of a kind of guest because you're the only guest so far that I've never met in person. But it sort of came about because a friend of mine had listened to the podcast and said that he thinks that it would be really great to have more key workers on it. And he suggested you, and we had a little chat, and you sounded really interested and had more to talk about than just doing what you're doing at the moment. So yeah, that's the basic reason why I wanted you on the show.
Yeah, cool. Hopefully, we'll see each other face to face when we're allowed to see people face to face.
Yeah, in 3 years or so, who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah, definitely. I look forward to it. But yeah, in the meantime, if you could just start by describing what you do and what has been your experiences with that over the last few weeks or so.
Yeah, okay. So I am a special needs teacher in a college. The college is specifically for students who have autism. So adults with autism 16 to 25. So I'm a lecturer at a college. So throughout this corona pandemic, I've worked all the way through, obviously other than the Easter holidays, but yeah, we've worked consistently. We found alternative ways of working, but we still have to go in and I still have to go in, and be face to face with students, as well as my TAs. So my students are staffed on a one-to-one basis.
Oh, okay.
So so you'd have to have support staff in there, in addition to teachers, in addition to sort of your office staff and things like that. So yeah, we've not really stopped, to be honest. The students broke up a little bit early for Easter. Other than that, us staff members have been in. It's varied in terms of support staff. They do some days at home, some days in college, because there's quite a lot of them. Because obviously, if you would imagine that the college has X amount of students and each student is staffed in a one-to-one ratio with support staff, you can just imagine how many support staff we have.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot, and they've been on a rota, but for teachers there's only actually around 6 teachers.
Okay.
So we've been on rotation. I've been mostly in college, rather than working from home. We've pretty much worked all the way through it. So it's been very interesting, to be honest.
Yeah. So just to clarify, so there was 6 teachers even before all this, or there's just been 6 teachers that have been allocated to be going in during this?
No, there's 6 teachers before this. So in general, there are 6 teachers across the college.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we've still remained. Some are actually. Do you know what? Some are actually shielding. There is one. No, I'm completely lying to you right now. Sorry. I've just realised there's one who's been at home throughout the whole time because of other health issues.
Right. Okay.
From prior to this. And then there's one recently who she's actually just been shielding in the last 2 weeks. So at the moment, there are 4 teachers now sort of trying to hold down the fort.
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so it's been quite tough, to be honest.
Yeah. So what have you found? Because there seems to be a lot of things that I imagine would be tough, but what, in your own words, so what has been the toughest parts?
I think the sort of there was a lot, obviously, loads of anxiety when the before Boris basically made the statement that all schools are shutting,
Mm.
um, schools and colleges, sorry. There was lots of anxiety because we didn't know what was happening, and that was a really, really stressful time. And I just remember working in the school, it was like a pressure cooker, and
Mm.
people were getting angry. People didn't want to come in. People were, because at that point we had all students in, all staff in, and people were just really, really conscious because the social distancing rules were still put in place. But then you'd go into work and, okay, well, it's impossible to have these social distancing rules because I have special needs students. I have students that rely on deep pressure, touch, and those sensory things. But at that time, before that statement was made, um, it was very ambiguous as to what was okay, what wasn't okay, and it began to be a bit of a moral dilemma. So when
Mm.
Boris made the statement, or um, I think the Chancellor of Education, I don't even know whether that's the right title, but I'm just going to use that. When he made the statement that all schools and colleges are closed to students other than students who have parents of key workers or students who have an educational health and care plan. That's
Mm.
basically if you have any sort of disability and you are under 25, you that's basically your passport of provision and support that you need. You get an educational health and care plan from the government. Those students remain in education. And so when that statement was made, it was like, okay, well, all of our students have an
Mm.
educational health and care plan. So what does that mean for us?
Yeah.
So all of this 2 meter distancing, social distancing, no mass gatherings, essentially my classroom would be a mass gathering. I have 10 students in my classroom. I have 10 additional support staff in my classroom, sometimes 11, and me. So
Mm.
that's 21 people in a class, 10 of whom you've said they have to stay in education.
Mm.
So, it's difficult. And then as a human being, not a teacher, and you just had a moral dilemma. It's like, okay, I don't want to go into work. Like, I really don't want to go into work because I genuinely am scared for the welfare of me, the welfare of the people I live with, my vulnerable family members. But then, am I wrong because I'm a teacher and I should be going in and supporting, and because my students are special needs, then, it would be difficult for them if I'm not there because it's teaching in special needs is very, very different from mainstream, as in you can't really just get a cover teacher in.
Yeah.
You just can't. So my support staff, I would rely heavily on my support staff when I'm not there. But at that moment in time, my support staff had cut in half. So a lot of them were shielding at that time. So we were short staffed anyway. And then if you take me out of the equation, then it's even worse.
Mm.
And I remember just before, they were trying to, the college were trying to figure out a rationale about how to work around this. There was probably like me and 3 other staff
Wow.
at that point in time working in my classroom. Fortunately, there were a few students whose parents decided that they were going to take them and keep them at home, which helped us out in terms of human resources.
Mm.
But the government just didn't give any clear guidelines for that demographic of young people. So it's like, yeah, okay, all schools are closed, blanket statement, apart from these students, and then that was it. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, so where do we go from then? What are the guidelines for special needs schools?
Right.
Um,
So I
the,
guess because the sort of general public, when they see it on TV, it could be thought, oh, well, that's just for the general public, but maybe there's loads of guidelines that go to the school directly, that aren't on
yeah,
TV.
you would,
But that didn't
yeah,
happen
you
for
would
you.
think that. No.
Right.
Schools and colleges have basically been left to sort of create their own policies and new ways of working and ways to figure it out,
Mm.
um, rightly or wrongly. So, like, it's difficult to point blame because we've never been in a pandemic before. So there's how do you know what's the right thing to do? Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
someone will
definitely.
always have an issue with whatever you do.
Mm.
But I think for us, for like myself and my team, it was just really, really difficult because it was like, okay, I have to go into work, right? But I genuinely am scared of going
Mm.
into work. And I genuinely know that I have students who will really, really struggle, um, without me being there or without someone sort of guiding what needs to happen.
Mm.
I know that, and I know that, some of my support staff really didn't want to be in, but they felt so scared that they were going to lose their job. They
Mm.
went in. Um, and I don't live that far away from where I work, and I drive in, so I can kind of, you know uh, the precautions are there because it's only me in my car. I go from my house to my car, from my
Mm.
car to where I work, yeah, and then wash your hands in between. But people that are coming from on public transport, who live on the other side of London, it's really difficult, and they genuinely just felt it's okay, moral dilemma, guilt, or, should I put my health and the health of my family first? And
Mm.
it's really difficult, and no one should ever be in that dilemma.
Mm. Yeah, and I think, yeah, like you say, sort of, it was just felt like a lose-lose situation. It sounds like it's just like you're gonna, if you don't go to school, then you're letting all these kids down, the staff down, all that, and if you do go, then you're increasing your risk of being a transmitter, and that's just like you say, just a horrible situation to be in. And yeah, so I mean, how were the people you living with? How were they with it? Were they concerned, or were they quite accepting? Was that another aspect on top of it, or?
No, I think, do you know what? Everyone, sorry, has been like fine about it. No one's really had an issue, which is
Mm.
good. Which has been a lot easier because, the other person that I live with is in a very similar boat, as me.
Yeah.
So they've been totally fine, but it then causes, obviously now you can't go out at
Mm.
all.
Mm.
Um, well, you can if you want to go to the shops or go for a walk, but, before we were on total lockdown, so before, when the lockdown measures were a little bit looser, um, I couldn't see my family anyway because I was at work still.
Mm.
So majority of people were working from home and trying to, self isolate, but because I was still going into work and still mixing with, colleagues and students, I still couldn't see my family,
Mm.
and friends. So I think from that aspect, it's really difficult, and especially, staff members who come from different countries. So some of my colleagues are come from Poland, and they're the only one here, and they like live in a big house in a room. So
Mm. Yeah.
they're just really lonely, and they don't really, because because we were still going to work and stuff, and then you're still mixing with people, you then become a risk to others, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and like you
yeah.
say, like it sounds like when you're in this sort of moral dilemma and this really tough situation, even though it doesn't solve everything, just having clear guidance from the government at least alleviates some of that sort of decision making. Whereas if the government don't even give you clear information and clear guidance, then that just makes the decision making even harder.
Exactly, and support for those families. So I
Mm.
know that some of my students, their parents are finding it so difficult being at home, so difficult. And I can only imagine how difficult it will be, like having to, um, provide home learning for your son or daughter who has a special need or a disability, because that lack of structure and everything's so different, it is so hard. But the government haven't provided any. So they made all these promises and said that, I think they said a statement where, oh, schools, say if you only had two key learner students in one school and then two key learner students in another school, then they could essentially amalgamate all the schools in the area and create one school with different kids, basically.
Mm.
Well, where's the evidence of that happening? Who's setting that up? Who's
Mm.
organising it? What social care provision are you putting in place to support families who have young people with disabilities? Like, where is that support? Because it's all well and good, but some people who have disabilities and education, health and care plan, because of other health issues, they can't go into school or college, so they have to stay at home. What support is there? What are you providing?
Yeah.
You've not said any, like, and I know it's difficult because everything's basically closed, everything's on lockdown, people can only do so much, but it was just a very there's just it from that aspect, there's been no guidance, no structure, no support, and it feels like they've just completely forgotten about that
Mm.
demographic of people during this whole lockdown. um it's been really difficult, and it's been really tough for some parents. Like, they just don't know what to do, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, no, completely makes sense. And how have you how have the school? So you're in this situation, you've been everything's going to lockdown, and you've got these very generic messages coming from the government. How did your school sort of cope? How did your staff cope? What was some of
I
the stuff put
think
together?
what we've done is we've tried to do sort of send as much work, like home learning work, as possible,
Mm-hmm.
and try to support, like making phone calls, videos, trying to get as much support trying to give, sorry, as much support at home as we possibly can.
Mm.
And yeah, where we can do online learning and things like that.
Mm.
But it is really difficult because parents are then overnight have become teachers, and they
Yeah.
really struggle. So yeah, it is really difficult, but we've just tried to support them as much as we can, just to sort of always be on hand. But we've also got students who are in school, so then it's sort of your workload is essentially doubled in a way.
Right. So what have you
Um,
found that with your workload that it's gone up since this all happened?
yeah, so I find that um, so obviously I do face-to-face teaching,
Mm.
which is fine, and then on the days that I'm not teaching, you will do online learning on an online platform, and then create resources for students who aren't able to access the online platform.
Right.
um, so you send work packs for those, so it's like you're doing lots, it's like you're being a bit of an octopus and you're doing lots of different things. So yeah, trying to get your head round a whole new online platform within a matter of days. Like, usually when you roll out a new program within any company, it would take a few months for you to get familiar with it, sort out all of the teething problems, and then once you've done that, you can then roll it out to parents and things like that. But it's been like a couple of days of training, it's live.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
obviously there are going to be lots of bumps along the way, in regards to knowing how to navigate yourself around, and then teaching parents how to use it is really, really difficult. Not all parents are computer literate, not all parents speak English as a first language.
Mm.
So, and doing it from a distance where you can't physically show someone how to do it, it's really difficult, especially when you're not an IT specialist yourself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been a real struggle. It's been very, very difficult. And it's been quite stressful, to be honest.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Well, yeah, well done to you and all your staff for carrying on and just doing the best you can. it's all you can do. Has the government, so at the beginning they gave it very vague, has sort of support and information and guidelines, have they come in as the weeks have gone on?
To be honest, I'm not sure. Like I've completely stopped watching the news because it's
Yeah.
just so depressing. So I'm not sure. I haven't been made aware of any updates or any guidelines. I know that there were talks of Boris announcing when schools are going to be reopening, or maybe announcing a phased transition in opening on Monday. I think I heard that today.
Mm. But even to
But
be honest, even if you don't watch the news, you don't. It's not part of your job to have to keep up with the news. Like, surely
yeah,
it's. When I was asking that question, I didn't know whether it would come through the school and then stuff was being fed down from the government through the school, just behind the scenes.
yeah, that's
Um,
the thing, and that's not. So
right,
basically, what as you know, I know as much as a senior leader would know. Like that's how crazy it is. Like
right,
everyone is in exactly the same. Like no one's hearing. I would expect information would go to sort of the senior people
mm,
from the Department of Education, which would then be
mm,
fed through the sort of chain, if you get what I mean.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but no, it's like as soon as when it was all going on, in terms of when we were still going ahead as a normal college, as soon as there was an update, then we'd be able to have a meeting about okay, next steps, because no one knew more than anyone else.
right. So let's say, for example, the news, like none of the staff watch the news, which they don't have to. They didn't watch they didn't weren't managed to get in time to see what was going on and what the
Yeah, yeah,
announcer
yeah.
was, and they had their time to look on their phone and things. So if they turn up to school the day that lockdown was announced, they wouldn't know anything. So there's not been any sort of documentation behind the scenes at all.
Well, what was happening? So it was really funny because the announcements always came out before sorry, after we'd already finished work. So
Right.
the address was, so the Boris would do the address, and then what would happen is that we'd get an email like late at night, um and just tell us like what the situation was for the following day.
For the following day.
um
So there wasn't even like a grace period of like this will be happening in a week or this will be.
No, because we were still opening, so it was literally like, okay, business as usual, blah 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 blah. This is what's happening. Come in tomorrow.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then obviously it was. I feel like the government were just trying to hold out until the Easter holidays, and then essentially schools and colleges would have a 2 week period where they could plan and organize what's happening, and then after the Easter, that's when the changes have really occurred in regards to working from home days, going in, having staff on a rota, reducing the amount of staff on campus, putting in social distancing measures, finding out what students are going to be in, what students aren't going to be in. So they had that time, and then we sort of knew what was going on, like the new sort of way of working. But prior to that, it was like as and when kind of thing.
Mm.
So on the day, we'd find out as soon as the news would come on, then we'd know more. And then until that, then there'd be no changes.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's something I hadn't really thought about. I guess you just assume any organization
Yeah, would
just.
have like sort of more in-depth knowledge and information, or would have the heads up.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but clearly not.
Yeah, because I mean, it makes logical sense that you've got the Department of Education, you've got the people who are running the Department of Education, and whatever minister
Yeah,
is the head of that. They all decide together. Even if it has to be a quick plan, they come up with something. Because obviously, everyone has had to cope
yeah,
with doing stuff quickly, and then you just feed that through and down, and come up with
yeah,
teaching
yeah, yeah.
methods. But the fact that that wasn't happening is crazy.
Even yeah, even like something like this is likely to happen, so make sure that your organization prepares for this. In the event of X happening, you need to have a plan in place, and then when the address happens and the
Yeah.
nation knows,
Mm,
you've got it. Boom, it's done.
yeah.
But, you know, I think it's really unfair to expect any organization to quickly, like, oh, okay, everything's closed. Right, let me, you know. I think when he said that the schools were closing, that was the day where he delayed the briefing, and it wasn't, I'm pretty sure it was later on in the evening, like 8 o'clock. I just think it's so unfair. Like, imagine being a head teacher and it's like 8 o'clock at night, and then you find out that schools are closed and all exams are like
Yeah,
finished.
yeah.
Like, it's absolutely insane.
Or even if they, they fall asleep because they've been working really hard and they have to
Yeah,
wake up in the morning and find out. Like,
yeah. It is like insane.
it's like breaking up with someone on Facebook instead of telling them in person,
Yeah,
or like even in the private sector. Like, imagine Apple like releasing something and not telling any of their staff and any of the people along the supply
yeah. Then they
chain.
find out in the morning. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay.
it's absurd. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, how have you and the other staff been dealing with it personally? Are they, yeah, what's been the sort of feelings over the last few weeks since it's all been happening?
I mean, I think it's got a lot better
That's good.
in regards to, you just learn to adapt though. That's the
Mm,
thing. Is I don't even think better is a good word. It's just it's is it this is the situation we're in.
yeah.
This is our normal right now. And I know people are like, oh, it shouldn't be the new normal, blah 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 blah. But
Mm,
actually, right now it is.
that's what it
This
is.
is
Yeah.
we've adapted. Like, it's been like over 6 weeks now. You naturally, as a human being, you adapt to this new way of living, and it's become, for me, I personally feel like, oh, okay, this is just my new normal kind of thing. I don't
Yeah.
feel, before, it was weird, because for me personally, like, work aside, the first time that you know you're going into lockdown, it's all like a little bit exciting, not exciting, but you know what I mean. It's
Yeah.
like, oh
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
god, it's time
Yeah.
to, because it
Feels like a
feels so,
movie.
yeah, and you feel so far removed from it, because
Yeah.
at that point in time there was no one I knew specifically that had been affected by it, no
Mm,
one that I knew had died or anything like that. So it was like, oh, so I felt so far removed from it, but I was involved in it because it was affecting me, obviously, because of potentially being in lockdown. It was all very like, everyone downloads House Party,
yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
like, it's all very new and exciting. And then it's like, oh shit, can I swear on this?
You've
Because I
already done
just
it now,
did.
so carry on.
Sorry. um, and then it's like, oh, this is really, really serious. People I know have now been affected. This is quite scary. Then you are really angry, and
Mm,
then you are constantly checking the news. You're constantly looking for the briefings. You wait to watch the news until it's like 5 o'clock, and then Boris tells you everyone goes and buys toilet roll. Apparently that's what you do. I didn't personally, because you feel like it's going to be there's going to be some like zombie apocalypse.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
And the way to defend yourself against zombies is to throw toilet
yeah,
paper at them, apparently.
obviously, because they are very scared of toilet roll. And then after all of that is gone,
Mm,
then you're just like, oh, okay, this is how it is, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
So I think now it's just fine. Before, because everything changed. You think I work in a special needs college, and when you teach people who are so used to structure and routine, and then you have to tell them you can't. So we go out regularly into the community, like to the gym, we go swimming, we do a lot of activities and learning outside the classroom. So to tell them that that's no longer an option, you can't do that. Cooking, because everyone decided to, take all of the food from the shelves. I can't have food tech lessons. So,
Mm,
okay, now that's off of the curriculum. So I can't teach my students, sorry, how to do independent living skills, because we can't access the supermarkets. I can't take them into the community, because it's unsafe. So
mm,
that was really hard and really tense.
Did some of the students not really understand what was going on, or did them?
No, at that time, because it was unclear, we didn't really understand what was going on.
Yeah,
So if I don't
yeah,
really understand what's going on, like, I just remember having to teach them about, okay, we need to wash our hands. There's a virus, and this was when it was all really far away, and it was just touching Italy, or had just impacted Italy quite significantly
right,
during that time. And I was, trying to tell them that there's a virus, and they just didn't understand. And it was almost like a punishment, not
yeah,
for them, like they felt like that.
yeah,
So that was really difficult and challenging for us to manage that from a behaviour perspective. So yeah, it was really hard, really, really hard. And then a lot of parents then decided to keep their sons or daughters at home. And then it was explaining to them, okay, why so and so isn't here, why our class size has dramatically shrunk, why a lot of staff members weren't in, because staff members with underlying illnesses, when that came out, okay, they had to then stay at home. So, the people that they're used to working with, who they're used to working with all the time, isn't now there. So now they're working with someone who's unfamiliar, and that person, and so it's okay, I'm now working with a stranger who I usually work with isn't here. And then all of these changes, and when they go home, they can't go. So a lot of my students, they enjoy getting on the train, getting on public transport, going to different places on the weekends. So now I can't do this at college, I can't do this at home. So their whole world, their whole entire world, and the things that are most important to them has just gone.
yeah,
Like literally just like vanished. And we can comprehend that this is how it is now. However, we know that it won't be like this forever. But with someone who doesn't have that cognitive ability and unable to see, okay, well, in 6 months' time or 3 months' time or whatever, this will be fine, and think, they're unable to see that logic. It's so hard, and it kind of feels like, okay, it's scary for them. They don't understand. And then having to be at home all the time as well is really, really tough. So I think just before Easter for college, me as a teacher was really, really difficult. Then we had the Easter holidays, and then now we've just got to the point where we're just used to how things are, and I just have to say to my students, because they constantly ask me, when are we going swimming? When are we doing this? When are we going to the community? And then they keep on saying, June is when we can go. June is when we can go. So I have to say, fingers crossed.
yeah,
We have to cross our fingers. And it is really sad, because I have students who constantly ask me, their world is so uncertain that things that are a dead cert, they're not even 100% about. So I have a student that always asks me, today is Wednesday, right? It's Wednesday. And I'm like, yes, it's Wednesday. And they're like, okay. And they'll repeat it over and over again.
Right.
You will be here tomorrow, won't you? You will, like, things that they know, they're just so unclear, because how do I know it's Wednesday? Because yesterday I was allowed to go swimming, and the day before that I was allowed to go to Sainsbury's. I've never had to line up to go into a shop, but now so it's really tough for them.
So for people that don't know, including me, so what are the sort of typical behaviours, or sort of the behaviours you'll see in your classes and things with students with autism? Like you said, sort of like they need routine.
I think, the main thing is sort of structure, routine. It literally varies. It's such a broad spectrum. I couldn't even give you. There's no one definition. Like, if you know one person with autism, it means that you just know one person with autism. Like, it's just so broad.
And what were some of the, you were saying at the start, it was very difficult. What are some of the behaviours you were sort of seeing? Well, obviously, completely understandable behaviours. I've worked with young people from varying degrees of sort of troubled backgrounds and other stuff as well. And obviously the behaviours are understandable. But what was difficult at the start when you were trying to explain this stuff? What sort of behaviours were you had to
I
sort of
think
teach
sort
them?
of every student has their own set of behaviors,
Mm,
whether they're challenging or not challenging.
mm,
They would have their ways, and it can vary from catatonic behavior, so sort of non-compliance,
right. Yeah.
to quite challenging, physically challenging behavior.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, those, like, it's one end of the spectrum where a, a young person will completely just shut off and be non-compliant and just not engage at
mm,
all day,
yeah.
to get really upset and want to throw things, and be really physically challenging in that way.
Yeah. So your role as a teacher, so each of the young people have like a support worker with them, do you say?
Yeah.
So your role of the teacher is to, I guess the support worker is more on the behaviour side of they, or like what's the
I
difference
think
between
it's
your
it's
role and
the
theirs?
behavior and learning. So
Mm,
my role would be obviously creating the lessons, creating the curriculum.
mm-hmm.
Some students have individualized curriculums dependent on their needs.
Okay.
And so basically I facilitate that environment, set them learning targets throughout the years that they're with me, and then the support staff is there to basically guide through obviously the behavior and support of the behavior, but also the learning, so to break it down for them, because they'd need that one-to-one support. So they're sort
Mm.
of my extra eyes and ears kind of thing, if you get what
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And yeah,
Okay. And you were saying like things are generally a bit easier now because I guess people have settled into it more. Have the students, do you find that they're finding it a bit easier now? Do you think they're settling into it, or is it
I
still
think
really difficult for them?
I think they are settling a lot better because there's structure in place
Okay.
for them.
Mm.
So they know the students that are there now are the students that are just going to be there for a while. And they know what's happening with the staff. And they know that some days I will be working from home and some days I'll be at college, and I will tell them what days these are, and they know what staff members are going to be there on what day, because everyone's working on a rota.
Right.
So I think in some ways there's a little bit more structure for them, so they're a little bit more at ease, and just being able to return to and be in college is huge for them, because being at home and being stuck at home,
Mm.
is, they're pulling their hair out. So just to be in college, I think they're grateful to get out of the house. So
Yeah.
I think generally, yeah, that it's a lot easier for them, because I think they couldn't get any clear answers from us before. They couldn't, because we didn't know, like, I had no clue.
Yeah.
No one had any idea what was going on, so they weren't able to get a definitive answer about what is going on, what can I do, what can't I do. Whereas now we're able to give them answers to
Yeah.
a certain degree. We're not able to tell them when it's going to finish, but at least they know um, that college is still going to happen when it's happening. And it's just the one thing that they have, because at the moment they can't obviously go and do the things that they would normally do at home.
Mm. Yeah.
But that's only, I think, like, that's only a few students. So a lot, obviously the vast majority of them are at home, so they're really struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you hear? You hear about the students that are at home, then that you sort of hear from the parents and things like that. What's they're
Yeah, so I regularly hear from the parent, like I have to ring the parents and see that everything's okay. So I regularly touch base with the parents, and some are doing fine,
mm.
and some are really, really struggling, and it's really, really hard, as are loads of parents, because I know friends of mine who are trying the homeschooling thing and just like do not have a clue what to do right now, and
Yeah.
they are absolutely struggling and cannot wait for their kids to go back to school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. And how long have you been doing this for?
I've been teaching. I've been in education 2012,
Okay. It's
the
about eight.
September of 2012, so about 8 years.
Wow. Okay. And
Yeah.
have you always done this type of teaching, or did you go through a different sort of types of
No,
schools? And
so I used to teach in mainstream college, a mainstream school. So I used to teach in a secondary school um, for a number of years. So I taught in a secondary school for about 5 years.
what was your subject you were teaching?
So I went in originally covering drama.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's what my degree is in. That's what my undergrad's in,
Ah,
drama and applied theatre. So I went in covering drama, and then the Conservative government had just come in, and then within that year they cut a lot of the funding for art projects. So like not art projects, sorry, but vocational subjects like art, drama,
mm,
um, media studies and things like that.
yeah, yeah,
So and then they brought in this new system. So basically the drama department uh, collapsed basically, and they
right,
made people redundant. So then but at the time they were implementing a new special needs unit within my school. So they asked me whether I wanted to go and work, if they gave me the training to work over in that unit. So
right,
then I started to do that. So then I started teaching there, still did a little bit of drama, but it was mainly sort of the after school drama clubs and putting on musicals for the school and stuff like that, because the Conservative government thought that that's all that you really need and no one really needs to study arty projects or
right.
arty subjects
Yeah.
as like actual qualifications, because they didn't see it as qualifications apparently.
Wow.
And that's another subject.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we can delve into that a little bit if you want. Unless you want to carry on sort of talking about your teacher journey.
I mean, yeah, I don't mind, but yeah, I was there, and then I just went to. So I was doing special needs. So we created an autism unit. I started up the unit, me and 3 colleagues. So we started with 2 students, and by the time I left, we had about 10. Then yeah, went to my college now, and I've been at my college for about 4.5, no, 4 years. Yeah,
Wow.
or just under 4 years, 3.5 years.
So when the you said the drama sort of drama classes and stuff collapsed, was there like no
Yeah.
drama then, or was it just really reduced? Or
They just reduced. So they brought in that EBAC system. I don't know whether you're familiar with that,
no?
but I, do you know what? I just struggle to get my head around it, to be honest. But I don't know how old you are, but when I was in school, I was able to pick GCSEs of like whatever I wanted. So I picked drama, art and design, which was 2,
Hmm.
and PE, because I wasn't very academic in that sense, but I was more practical and physical.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm
So
I'm 28 and I picked drama was one of mine. That was probably my favorite subject.
yeah, and when I was in school, so I'm 29, turning 30, but you could just pick whatever you wanted, basically.
Hmm.
But when I first got into education, they implemented the EBAC, which basically meant, I'm trying to like describe, because I'm trying to get my head around it, that basically there's certain pathways. So you were then allocated pathways. So it's gone from picking whatever you want, but then the school allocating you a pathway based on how intelligent you are. And
Wow.
yeah, and so some subjects weighted more than others, so you couldn't pick 2 art subjects if you were really good at science, if you get what I mean. So
Right.
if you were predicted like an A in science, then you would have to do like triple science and something else academic, but you weren't able to pick sort of art and drama.
Wow.
Yeah, it was based. And then what ended up happening is that as a drama student, because I taught A-level drama as well, academically, I was getting students who were a lot weaker in my class in drama, who were really like, some of them were really good in terms of the practical aspects, but really struggled with the theoretical side, which is fine. You can support that. But then you have some students that had no interest in drama. They didn't care about it, but they were just put in the subject because they're not very good in other aspects. So then they were told, oh yeah, you can just have a drama. You can just have drama because you don't have to be intelligent. But I'm analysing Shakespeare and I'm getting my students to look at Chaucer.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
you kind of have to have a certain level of English literature to
Yeah.
be able to study this subject. They kind of go hand in hand, funnily
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then obviously when, if your school or organisation are then doing that because of the new government guidelines, then your results plummet because obviously your students aren't going to get the grades that they need. So then if your results are in the decline, then people are, and obviously those are published sort of every year. You see the stats of what subjects did well and how many
Mm.
A to C's you got in that aspect. And because of that, so the arty subjects, or the more practical and arty subjects, weren't doing so well. So they were in the decline in terms of student numbers, and then the department just basically collapsed, and they just made people redundant.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's almost like an
So
underhanded way of trying to close
yes,
down all these
underhanded
departments.
way of getting rid of it. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I think I read an article a long time ago, and I think it was in the Guardian, and it was basically like someone had a conservative member had quoted, we don't need to have these things in the curriculum. People can do these as sort of extracurricular activities. Yes, providing you come from a family that can afford to pay
Yeah.
for these extracurricular activities,
Mm.
which is why you always find in drama schools, that I went to drama school as well, that the demographic of people are from sort of middle to upper class families
Mm.
and drama clubs and things like that because they can afford that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just ridiculous.
And also, some families, they might not have an inclination towards those things, whereas some
Exactly.
children at school is the place where they open their eyes to, like, wow, like I love being on the
100
stage.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what? Just out of memory, obviously, you don't have to be absolutely perfect with your memory with it, but so drama was one of them. Music, was that also one that was
Yeah,
suffered a
yeah,
bit?
music definitely suffered. So the music department was just ended up being like one person.
Right. Geez. So
Um,
art as well.
yeah,
A PE, was that one, or
I think so. I can't remember.
okay, but definitely those three: the drama, the music, and art.
Yeah, and sort of your like textiles. Yeah, because they got rid of graphics. Because I remember they completely got rid of graphics out of the curriculum,
Mm,
graphics design,
right.
which is really interesting because now the way that the world is now, like, how did you even get rid of that subject?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
that's insane.
Yeah, and you said media studies as well, so obviously that is
Yeah,
super relevant now.
media studies took a massive hit, and then it's just crazy because now I was speaking to a friend of mine. Now it's obviously all gone the other way because all kids want to do now is become like YouTube stars or create their own content, and which is great to a certain
Mm,
extent. But
yeah.
if there's no resources put in place and you're not like with it in terms of what's happening right now, and you're not looking towards what the future is,
Yeah.
then
And
you're not really offering
uh,
kids much.
and also, like, I mean, this is more just sort of my experience, but on a social level, like, I've found that the people that are able to express themselves in some way or confident are more likely to get jobs than someone who's slightly more qualified sometimes.
Yeah,
And I
100%.
remember going through drama when I was younger. I was already a little bit confident anyway, but the people I saw, including me, but some of the people I saw around me, I remember two of the shyest people I ever met through doing like 5 years of drama, or however long it was. They became so much more confident, and not just in the class, but outside as well. They were having conversations, they were putting their views across, and that is an
Totally.
indispensable skill. It's something that, if you don't have music and art and drama or that sort of self-expression in school,
Yeah.
then you're going to see society really take a big hit in a really crucial way.
Definitely, and I think the key thing for me was as a teacher, was the social cohesion. So
Mm,
you'd have some students who were from some of the poorer parts of the borough, um, you know, who picked drama because they liked it, and they were good. And then you had some but had never been to the theatre before ever in their lives. They'd never been to the theatre. And then you have some students who picked drama because from a young age their parents had taken them to the theatre and they'd been cultured in that aspect.
mm,
And obviously putting a production on, you work very cohesively and you have to work as a team and you have to work within a group, supporting other people to put on productions, so doing people's lightings,
mm,
rehearsing together and things like that. And you spend so much time together, and people from two different worlds who ordinarily probably don't mix, don't have the same friendship groups, um, you know, aren't friends, then are in a class together, whether you have to work with that person. And I really just liked that sort of social cohesion aspect of it, and
mm.
watching sort of kids learn from each other. And I tell you what, I did a project where, the play The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime.
Yes, yeah.
So basically, if you have this thing called pupil premium, and it used to be called like free school meals. So each child in a school who is on free school meals, which is now pupil premium, you get an extra sort of supplement from the government. So they give you a certain amount of money for that child. So I think it's in the thousands, to say it's like £3,000 a year or whatever.
Mm.
And I was ahead of year at that time. And I was like, what are we doing with this pupil premium money? Like, we had a large proportion of students on pupil premium. And that play was in the theatre, and I was like, why? And a lot of my students who were pupil premium weren't really able to go home and share what they were doing. Well, yeah, they were able to go home and share what they were doing with their parents, but their parents really didn't understand what was going on, kind of thing. Because either they were working loads, single parent family, had other siblings, or parents had never been to the theatre themselves. So we set up a project where they read the book with their parents. So I bought each child a book and each parent a book,
Oh,
and
wow.
and then we did a book club. So and then they had like a journal, basically. So their parents would read a chapter. I would read a chapter with them at the book club, and then they'd go home, talk to their parents about what they just read, and then write in their journal. The parents would write in their journal. They would write in their journal about the book and how they felt and stuff like that. So they had something to talk about. And
Mm.
then at the end of it, the parents and the students, we all bought them tickets to go to the theatre and watch it.
Wow.
And it was so nice. And like, parents had never been to the theatre before and were just so pleased that they got to experience that with their children as well, for like the first
Yeah.
time for both of them, because theatres are really expensive. Like, you can't, if you have 3-4 kids and you're a single parent, or even if you have one kid, or you you both parents there, it's really expensive going to the theatre.
Mm.
um so yeah, and like that aspect of it was so nice. So, and that's just from teaching drama, do you know what I mean? So the
Yeah.
things that you can do with it, and people just underestimate it and think that it's like a DOS subject, or you don't need it in the curriculum, or
Mm.
we need more um science and maths and STEM subjects, which I agree with, but it's that sort of, I think it's called that instrumentalist ideology, where it's like from the Margaret Thatcher era, where you have to, the reason why you go to school is to pay back to society through jobs like English, maths, science, like all of that kind of stuff, without, and things like drama, arts, media, music is all sort of looked as like, oh, airy fairy subjects.
Which
You know what I mean?
is flawed in its conception, because if even if that is what it's supposed to be, to give back to society, like that means that if the Tories think that getting rid of all this stuff, or giving less funding to it or whatever, then they should stop watching all the films they're watching at the moment. They should stop listening to all the music they're listening to, all the things that basically get them through the day or find some self-expression through it. They should just go, well, and we are receiving the fruits at the moment from people in society who have learnt this stuff, and if it's not nurtured, then it's it's going to be a lot grimmer.
And the only sector that remains sort of not in sort of massive financial disarray during the last recession was the performing arts and media sector.
Sorry, say that again.
I said the only sector that wasn't massively in financial disarray during the last recession. One of the only sectors is the performing arts media sector.
Wow.
They weren't massively hit.
Yeah, and I'm guessing it's going to be the same this time as well. Because people will
find solace in entertainment.
Yeah.
What else is there to do?
Yeah.
And it's so adaptable. Do you know what I mean? So it's probably one of the only mediums that you can find on any platform. You can find a way.
Yeah. So why do you think
this podcast? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't put me anywhere near a lot of the great artists going out, but
no, but it is a form of like creativity.
Yeah. Exactly, and all the podcasts that are out there that any ones that are doing great things, it's exactly. It's all
exactly. There's so much content out there during this time, and people are going to look to try and make their own way, because we don't know what we're going to be like in the next few years because of COVID-19.
So why do you think that, like, some governments or some people in government or whoever, really, even members of the public, but why do you think some people can't see that benefit? Why do you think there's such a
because I honestly think that there's that sort of privilege, isn't there? So they don't understand that it's not necessarily normal. That's not what I'm trying to say. They don't understand that some people will need those things as an outlet to help them have a new way of thinking. So, for example, I've got certain students who were just really, really poorly behaved. This is when I worked in mainstream. Really, really poorly behaved, on the brink of exclusion, were in care, had a really rubbish upbringing, but they would thrive in PE. When you'd watch them like run 100 meters, that's when they're at their happiest. Or when they're in a drama production and they're able to show their confidence, that's when they're most happiest. And they will need things like that. They will need drama clubs and things like that to be on the curriculum, to nurture them and to see that there is another way of thinking and feeling and things like that. But they don't think about that population. They don't think about that group. It's, oh well, if you want to people naturally who are making those decisions about what goes into the curriculum come from privilege and come from it being the norm to have various books and various bits of literature in their house. It would be the norm to go to the theatre or to a museum, or, you know,
Yeah.
that's normal for them because they come from a place of privilege. And it is very difficult to be able to comprehend,
Mm.
you know, that on any type of level, like that being a need rather
Mm.
than an option.
Mm.
Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And yeah, no, completely. And it's a good perspective and a good answer, I think. Yeah, it's like it's a lack of empathy, it seems,
Yeah,
a lack of understanding, and because if you live in this world where, you know, English and maths are the things that will get you far in life,
yeah,
and like you say, you live in this world where you've got a, you know, a mini library in your house, and you have all these.
yeah,
It's a completely different. And if you don't really try and empathize with the population, um, uh,
yeah,
and it's also, I guess, not putting enough importance in diversity. Um,
100%.
it becomes too much of a monoculture, which in any form is proven to be destructive. So
Yeah,
if you have a diversity of skills and passions, you know, it's not going
yeah,
the other way. It's not saying maths should be pushed out, because we have amazing scientists and people that are pushing the world forward
yeah,
because of
yeah,
maths and English, you know, writers. And but you to push these other things down, like you say, yeah, it could just be because they don't really understand it and they don't empathize with the people that
and they, yeah,
truly get something from it.
and will need it. It's just like the amount of youth centres that have
Mm,
closed down, for kids, and for some kids, it's the only outlet that they have.
yeah,
You know, the local youth centre on the estate is what they look forward to.
yeah,
Is what
like
I looked forward to when I was growing up, to be honest.
yeah,
Um, so, you know, and you close all those down, you wonder why, um, all this knife crime is on the rise. But what are you, you know, you're not you're not investing into, society, or that area of society. You're not putting back, you're taking away, but you're not replenishing.
mm,
And then you're asking questions,
mm,
why is this happening? But you're not actually putting any proactive strategies. You're just closing everything and putting blockers up. And obviously this is just my perspective from my experience of being
sure,
in
sure,
education, and working one-on-one, being with these types of kids, and what I've experienced in my, you know, an impact of certain decisions that have been made in government. Other teachers and stuff will have a completely different perspective and may disagree with lots of what I'm saying. But,
sure, sure,
you know, I'm just saying, as a result of certain decisions that have been made, this is, if you feed it down to the chain, this is what like down the chain, this is literally what happens, and the result of these decisions. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, it's just, it's crazy, because I always think that when a decision is made in regards to education or whatever, does anyone ever go and see on the front line the impact of these changes? Like,
yeah,
does anyone ever
mm,
go and just spend a day
mm,
shadowing?
mm,
You know, like, because I think in every sector, everyone has thought of someone that's in power that's asked you to do something that's completely outrageous, or there's a new way of working which is ridiculous because things always
mm,
change, and the bureaucracy of everything. And then you always think, do my job for a day, or come and see what I actually do.
yeah,
So you
mm,
can actually understand what you're asking of me,
yeah,
as a teacher, or as any profession. I'm sure everyone has this. You can work in Tesco's stacking shelves, and someone can, you know, from up above will ask you to do something ridiculous, and it's just like, do you understand what I have to do with my day?
yeah,
um so yeah, it's really interesting, but it's also interesting that the fact that now all of a sudden we're really important and everyone wants to clap for us at 8 o'clock.
yeah,
Like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, now I'm the most important cog in this machine that is
yeah,
society. And we're the, you know, nurses, nurses in particular, teachers, people that work in supermarkets, like all of those delivery drivers, all those essential workers, are now so important, and we're so integral, and there's so much sort of praise and emphasis on how important we are as essential workers. But you really were not saying this a while ago.
No.
Like, this was not the narrative. Weren't sort of delivery drivers and people that worked in shops, weren't they called unskilled workers a few months ago?
Yeah, and nurses. I think nurses were.
Well, nurses,
Yeah.
that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, calling a nurse an unskilled worker. Like, that is outrageous.
Yeah, it is quite funny actually. It's like it was almost like set up a comedy. Like, it was pretty recently as well that they started coming out with stuff. So it was like almost just before the coronavirus. I think they were saying low skilled. So all of these groups that are now
low skilled
are the ones that. Well, to be honest, they always were the ones keeping us going. It's just that and they were just as important as they are now. It's just we just are actually paying attention. So I guess I hope that is a silver lining that comes out of this, that people such as yourself and key workers, because they're more in the spotlight, I hope they can hold on to that power, and I hope that that power can be used to really hold the government to account and go, look, we've been through this. You've seen how important we are. If you backpedal, if you start going back to the way things were and treat us how you used to treat us, then people won't stand for it anymore. So that's what I hope will come out of this.
Yeah, me too. I think the worst thing that could happen is that once we get over it, it just goes back to normal in terms of the way that people are treated and looked at in society. But it needs to reflect in pay. Nurses' pay is awful. I mean, teachers' pay isn't great. I mean, I didn't go into education to become a rich woman, that's for sure. But the pay of nurses is absolutely shocking. Like, it's absolutely shocking for like that much responsibility. Is absolutely wild.
Yeah.
I think anyone being in charge of looking after someone's life and caring for someone and being the crucial factor of whether someone lives and dies based on your care should be paid a lot more.
Yeah, and I've tried to be realistic and optimistic, and that side of me, I genuinely think it's going to be very hard for the government to go back to how things were now. I think after the recession and stuff, there wasn't the same media attention on key workers. It was just everyone was going through a recession. It was just a broad blanket thing. And so they could just make these cuts, and they could just put out these numbers to make it look like they were doing great things, and it sort of goes under the surface. But because the media and people in general are just so focused on key workers and just like that, I really hope, and I really think, if I had to put a bet on, I think the government are really going to struggle to pull any of that back. So let's hope for that. Unfortunately, I mean, I'd love to chat to you for a lot longer. I feel like there's many more things we can chat about. But
it's gone so quick.
Yeah. So we're actually over an hour. So yeah.
Okay.
That was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
So yeah, I mean, if you'd be up for it, it'd be great to have you back on and chat some more about this or whatever else.
Yes, for sure. I would love to come back on.
Cool. All right. Well, before we end, I'll just say to anyone listening, there's been amazing stuff in this episode. I've really enjoyed it. And so if you have any thoughts yourself, if you're a key worker or even if you're not, just you can comment, you can share, and just contact me if you want to come on the show and have your own views put out there. I think it's great. So but lastly, I'd just like to say thank you, Jade.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I can't even remember all that we've discussed. So
neither can I. I have to listen to it back.
Yeah, good luck. But thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Bye.
Bye. There's something else I'd like to say to any listeners, all three of you. This podcast is an ongoing process. It's an ongoing experiment. I'm trying things out and seeing what works and what doesn't. And so any feedback on this or other episodes will be really appreciated. I don't want this podcast to just be for my own enjoyment. The goal is for it to benefit people in some way. And constructive feedback is the best way to know if this goal is being achieved. If I don't know something's rubbish, then I'll just keep producing rubbish. If I don't know something's good, then I'll just stop producing anything good. And also, if you think of anyone that you know that would be a good guest for me to chat to, then please let me know. I would love the opportunity to speak to a wide range of people about an even wider range of subjects. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope you continue the conversation. Bye for now.